What's up everybody, Noble Comics here today to bring you 10 facts you may not have known about Batman. Starting with number 10. Did you know that Batman is the third best-selling comic character of all time? That's right, though today for DC Comics, he is definitely their number one selling character and has been for some time, but overall he's not their number one. Batman has sold over 484 million copies as of 2015, but he is still surpassed by two others. One being One Piece, the manga, which has sold over 500 million copies, and number one, of course, being Superman, who has sold over 600 million copies. So, though Batman is trying his best, Superman is still taking the number one spot, though not for long, as I assume that One Piece will be surpassing Superman before too long. We also know that Batman has had a number of villains throughout the years. He has one of the most dynamic and diverse rogues gallery of any villain ever. But did you know that Batman has actually defeated two Marvel villains before? And here I kind of use the term villain lightly, because one of them was the Hulk. That's right, Batman actually defeated the Hulk in a Marvel DC crossover. This was in 1981, and the way Batman did it was by throwing down a canister of knockout gas and then striking the Hulk in his solar plexus, forcing him to breathe it all in, and then passing out and collapsing. Not exactly a fair fight, but what more can you expect from someone like Batman? And now that just adds more validity to the fact that Batman with prep time can beat anybody. But he actually did defeat another Marvel villain, being Carnage. He teamed up with Spider-Man in another Marvel DC crossover, and the two of them were able to defeat Carnage together. And look, we also know that Batman is the peak physical human, right? He's as strong, as fast, as durable as any human can get, but even he has limitations as far as his genetics are concerned. And what I'm talking about is Batman's diet, which is clearly unforgivable. So brace yourself, you may want to sit down for this one. But Batman likes his steak cooked well done. That's right, Batman apparently likes the taste of leather, which is just plain anti-American. But it doesn't stop there, because we also know that Batman doesn't eat apple pie. That's right, talk about un-American, right? After reading both of those and putting them on this list, I had to tear down all my Batman posters. He's no longer one of my favorite characters. It is strictly unforgivable. Speaking of unforgivable, did you know that Batman's no-kill rule was actually not a part of the original character? That's right, the original Batman actually did kill people in usually quite brutal ways. He carried a couple pistols on his hip and would shoot people. He would burn people in acid. He would even hang them from the Batcopter. He was straight up brutal with it. Now, soon after, that did all change and Batman's no-kill and no-gun rule did come into effect. But for a while there, the character did kill, and it's no surprise. He was based heavily off of the pulp character The Shadow, who similarly used lethal measures against his opponents. And in fact, the first Batman comic was actually kind of a ripoff of one of these Shadow stories. Needless to say, going with the no-kill rule definitely benefited the hero and comic books overall, as now that's a staple for comic book characters in general. And it makes sure that all of Batman's most iconic villains can stick around without fear of having a bullet put in them. And how can we talk about Batman's iconic villains without talking about the most iconic villain, not just of Batman, but of any comic book character, the Joker? And that the Joker was actually inspired by a 1928 film called The Man Who Laughs. And that was actually based on the 1869 novel under the same name by Victor Hugo. And this is actually more of a tragic love story about this disfigured character, with a permanent smile on his face, being ridiculed by many, falling in love with a woman who he thinks could never accept him. The Joker, the Man Who Laughs we got in the comics, was not quite as bright. But the similarities in appearance are there, and the name is actually referenced pretty recently with the Batman Who Laughs character. Now, so far we've talked about a few Marvel DC crossovers, but there is one I haven't mentioned yet. That was the time that Batman merged with Wolverine and gave us one of the coolest, most 90s looking characters ever with Darkclaw. That's right, Logan Wayne, a combination of both Batman and Wolverine, was actually a character briefly who brought together the best of both worlds between the two, and his arch nemesis was the Hyena, a combination between the Joker and Sabretooth. It was a very cool but short-lived character that I hope they bring back soon. Now, when you're looking to learn more about Batman, of course, I've got you covered here, but if you want to take a further step, you can actually take a college course on Batman. Now, many of you probably know that Pennsylvania offered a Psychology of Batman college course, but it has expanded even further beyond there. The UK and Canada both offered their own Batman courses on the psychology and science of Batman, becoming the Batman, different things like that, which are sure to not disappoint your parents whenever you come home and they ask you what you've been studying. I'm just waiting for the day personally whenever I can major in Batman, maybe minor in Spider-Man, and then we can look at what master's courses they might provide for that. But enough with the gross real world, let's get back into the comic book world, where Batman, though just being a street-level character, not having any powers or anything like that, has actually defeated one of the most powerful beings in the entire DC universe. That's right, Batman, personally, has defeated Darkseid. Not once, but twice. One time he shot him with the God Gun, breaking his no-gun rule in a very rare occasion, but he also defeated him while wearing his Hellbat armor. So, mild-mannered Bruce Wayne, normal guy, has defeated one of the most powerful gods in the DC universe 2 separate times. Why doesn't Daredevil ever do stuff like this? But not only that, Batman is also the only mere mortal to be able to dodge Darkseid's Omega Beams, which just adds to his resume of being the most badass man alive. After that fight though, I know Batman needed some R&R back in the Batcave. But did you know, much like Harley Quinn, the Batcave did not originate from the comics, but from a Batman TV show. That's right, in 1943, on a serial called The Batman, the Batcave was first introduced, and was then promptly adopted for the comics, and has become a staple of the character going forward. Not only that, but this same serial introduced us to the iconic, thinner look of Alfred that we see today, as opposed to the more filled out version prior to 1943. So this serial really came in clutch, providing 2 of the most iconic pieces of Batman's lore. Finally, the number one thing you may not have known about Batman has to do with his origins. Now, if you've seen, read, watched anything Batman related, it'll always pop up on the screen saying, Batman created by Bob Kane. But that's not entirely true. Batman really wasn't created by Bob Kane, it was created by a person named Bill Finger. Now, it's true that Bob Kane came up with the name of Batman, but the character he had was very different. The original look was inspired by Dracula. He had a red suit and black wings, and Zorro with the mask, and even some Leonardo da Vinci designs for the cape. But it was Bill Finger who designed the Batman we know today, designed and wrote many of the great villains and side characters we know today, created Gotham and the Batmobile, and every aspect of the character. Much of that came from Bill Finger, but he was never really credited up until 2015. So Batman was created in 1939, and the actual creator, or at least you could say at the very least, a very significant co-creator, wasn't even credited until 2015. The reason being that Bob Kane had a very airtight contract with DC, being named as the sole creator, and so Bill Finger was essentially lost to obscurity. He got no royalty from Batman, who was again one of the most popular comic book characters ever. He only had one surviving heir, who I do believe receives some royalties from DC now, but it's still a tragedy that such an influential creator for one of the most influential and popular characters of all time was essentially let out to dry for DC because they didn't want to pay another creator royalties and because of Bob Kane's contract. And I don't want to take away from Kane too much. Obviously, he did contribute to the character. He definitely ran Batman like a business, which you could say propelled it to the popularity that it has today. But the creative addition that Bill Finger added made the character that we have today. Everything unique and enjoyable and iconic about the character came from Bill Finger, including many of the great villains and side characters like Robin and the Joker. But up until extremely recently, his name was nowhere to be found. Luckily today, his name is included in all Batman comics and movies and animated. It'll say created by Bob Kane with Bill Finger, which is nice to see, but at this point, it's too little too late. Bill got screwed, which was not uncommon during that era, especially when it came to comic books, but it still sucks. And he deserved better. But with that said, those were 10 things you may not have known about Batman. Let me know in the comments if there's anything here you didn't know. Be sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.